Hello, and welcome to this series of podcasts on Gordie Gillespie, who many of us believe was the greatest coach of all time. I hope that these conversations with players and friends of Gordie will help illuminate Gordie's greatness. But more importantly, I hope we can learn how Gordie did it. He was the winningest collegiate baseball coach of all time and the greatest Illinois high school football coach of all time. But we're not interested in his secrets of winning games, but his secrets of winning the hearts, minds, and the development of his young athletes. If anyone knows Gordie and how he worked his magic, it's his longtime assistant and compatriot, Tony Delgado. In this conversation, Tony gives us his insightful perspective into Gordie's greatness. Hello, everyone, and welcome. It is my incredibly genuine pleasure to welcome today one of my greatest friends, Tony Delgado. Tony enrolled at Lewis University and played for Gordie from 61 to 65. Tony was our point guard and our par excellence shortstop. He was the heart of all 8 teams that we played together on. And Tony, even those 3 summers we played with Gordie, we probably played for him for 11 seasons. Then Tony became a teacher and a coach. He was at places like Lewis and Morris. And then Gordie had the great foresight to hire Tony as his assistant in, what year was that? 1980, right, Tony? And till 95, when you became head coach at University of St. Francis. But then you just said you were his assistant for 2 years in the 70s when you won 2 championships.
Right, right, on 2 of the national championship teams, the 74 and 75 teams. But then he won a 3rd one, 76. But I wasn't helping him. He asked me to take over the tennis program. We lost our tennis coach, so I took over the tennis program.
Well, one of the things I want to ask you about is to give me the short version, because I think we could talk for 5 hours about the miracle season of 93. But in a way of all further introducing you, Tony, I thought of a story that, because Gordie continually told me that Tony Delgado was the greatest assistant a coach could ever hope for. And I was wondering why. Well, you've got persistence, you've got focus, you've got attitude. You are a born leader. And you became a leader the first time I met you. I don't know if you remember this, but we were in Comiskey Park practicing for 3 hours on a Friday afternoon. You and I were members of the City All-Stars. And I think there might have been 2 other guys on that team from the Catholic League who I didn't know because they played on the South Side, and all you public guys. So we didn't know anybody on that team. And they threw us together at Comiskey Park. We were going to play the suburban team in Wrigley Field the next day. Talk about a glorious weekend, right? And this story, Les Moss was our coach. He was the White Sox catcher coach. And he was, like Gordie, he would bring humor to practice all the time. And I can remember infield practice, and he had 2 balls going. Later, Gordie did the same thing. But as a catcher, you got to keep awake, because as the shortstop's throwing the ball to the first baseman, who's going to throw it to me as the catcher, the coach is hitting the next ball. So I got to watch it, make sure I hit it. So one time he comes to you, and he, by mistake, he hits one too close to second, behind second base. And you went over and you fielded it beautiful. The ball was behind you when you caught it. You pirouetted, and you 360, you fired a strike to first base. And all of us went, whoa! Not Les Moss. I hand him that ball as the throw's going to be coming in from first. And he says, "You think you're good, kid, huh?" Boom. Then he hit one to your right. You went over, you backhanded it, planted that right foot, and fired a strike to first base. I give Moss the next ball. He says, "You think you're good, kid?" And so he must have hit 6 or 7 balls to you right in a row. You didn't miss one of them. You remember what you said afterwards, though?
Well, all I remember about that infield, when we were practicing there, when I left that field, I said, how can they possibly make an error on this field? We grew up playing in the Chicago Park District field.
Coke bottle bottoms on the bottom, bricks.
I couldn't believe it. They could make an error on a professional field.
Well, then your focus, your attention, your veracity, what you believed in came across. You became the leader of that team. We didn't know anybody else. Nobody, I don't think one person. But believe it or not, John Stopa, I think, was on that team, but we didn't know John until later. And he was on the team, but we didn't know him then. And you became the leader. And I remember that so much. That was probably the end of June, maybe the end of August or September, only months later. I arrived at Lewis College, and I knew nobody on campus. And I was petrified because, again, I was a C student in high school. I was worried about flunking out. And I'm looking at all these new faces. I'd never been any place where I didn't know anybody. And I see this guy, and I look at him. I said, "Hey, are you the shortstop?" And this guy looks at me and says, "You were the catcher. It was you and me, and we've been friends ever since." I said, "Wow, I got a friend here." And you became an incredible leader. You were the leader on the basketball court. You were the leader on the baseball field, and that's what Gordie saw. Now, you recently told me that your incredible relationship of all of us who have known Gordie, you probably have known him the best. You sat right next to him and went through all these emotional times with him. But you just told me that your relationship with Gordie was prior to 1961.
Well, Ray, I call it a string of fate. When I was 12 years old, a fellow by the name of Frank Kaufman at our local social center put a basketball in my hand. That's when I started playing basketball. Now, let's fast forward to my senior year in high school. We're playing Marshall. The Marshall Commandos are the best team in the city.
Oh, I remember that.
We never beat them. Okay, but we had a pretty good game, and I didn't realize that sitting in the stands was my high school basketball coach. He had been my coach for 3 years, but he left my senior year. But he was there watching that game. So after the game, okay, he says, "Tony, what are you going to do? College?" I had no plans for college. He says, "I know this fellow that coaches basketball at this small college out west of Chicago, Lewis College." Well, he and Gordie were schoolmates at DePaul University. Okay, so he gave him a call. Okay, now continuing my string of fate. Okay, now we're playing Crane Tech. Crane Tech's the second best team in the city. We never beat them. Coach Gillespie is sitting in the stands. Again, we don't know he's there. I don't know he's there. We got beat 99-50. Okay. I scored one basket. I made some free throws, made my free throws, but scored one basket. Now, I call it a string of fate because I say, who else other than Gordie would see something in a 5'9" guard, scored one basket, and just got beat 99-50. Okay, but he saw something, and he saw Lee Lampley. Okay, but Lee Lampley would have been a great one had he stayed in school. Okay, but now let's keep going with the story. Okay, now it's our junior year. It's the summer between our sophomore and junior year at Lewis. One of my best friends is getting married, okay, in Chicago, and I'm in the wedding party. Okay, so at the wedding reception, who do I run into? Frank Kaufman, the fellow that put the basketball in my hand when I was 12 years old. And so he asked me, "Tony, Tony, what are you doing?" I said, "I go to Lewis College." He says, "Lewis College, is that where Coach Gillespie, Gordie Gillespie goes?" I say, "Yeah." He says, "He and I were on the Great Lakes Naval basketball team during World War II."
Get out of here.
Yep. Okay. So there's a connection there. Okay. Now, continuing the story, now I've graduated. This is the funny part to me. I graduated. Okay. And the night before I'm going to get married, okay, you know how the boys take you out on the town. Yeah. Well, we started on the south side of Chicago, ended up on the north side at a place called Baby Huey's. Okay. And I'm in the middle of the dance floor. I don't know where I bump into a guy. And this guy looks at me and says, "Aren't you Tony Delgado?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I'm the guy Gordie sent to scout you. So before Gordie saw me at Crane Tech, he sent somebody to see me play." Now, this is the ironic part, Ray. I've only scored over 30 points twice in my life. Once was with you on the team up at St. Norbert's in De Pere, Wisconsin. And the other time was at Wells High School where this guy saw me play. Now, if he had seen me play the week before against Austin High School, the last place team in the league, I scored 8 points. There would have been no Ray Cogger, no Tom Kennedy, no Pat Sullivan, no Gordie Gillespie, no Lewis College. But that's what I call my string of fate. He happened to see me at that game, and he called Gordie and said, "Well, the guy's 5'9", but he scored, 30 points." So anyway, I was fortunate. The connections. Okay. and then continuing on, okay, I eventually ended up working for Coach Gillespie at Lewis University. Okay, he was the athletic director. Okay, he hired me as a basketball coach, and then he left. Okay, and then I left in 1980 and joined him, as you already said, I joined him as his assistant at St. Francis for 15 years. And then to complete the string of fate, okay, when he left and I took over as head coach, his position at University of St. Francis. So that's my story about me and Coach Gillespie and string of fate.
Boy, of all of us, you as I said, you've been in his hip pocket for so many years, and you can tell us so much about him. And by the way, I scored 30 points once, but it took me 10 games. It took me 10 games. I scored 3 per game, and I got to 30 points. That's fantastic. Well, your senior year, you and Wayne Molis,
well, we
put together a season for the ages, and we should have gone further in that national tournament, but we did okay.
I take it back to my high school days. Okay, Wayne Molis for 3.5 years. He's a Harrison graduate. Okay, so he's at 3.5 years. Okay, and we had another kid, Mike Smith, who went on to be an outstanding player at Chicago Teachers College South, where Spence Laurie was coaching.
Wow.
We never won.
How can you have Delgado, Lampley,
and Molis
and not win?
Yeah, we never won.
Did Wayne? I mean, Wayne was one of the best players in the country.
He could shoot.
So he could shoot in high school too, but
he went unnoticed because of where we were playing in our section with Crane, Marshall, Farragut, Wells. He just went unnoticed.
Yeah, he went on and played for the Knicks for several years.
Yeah.
And the only reason, Gordie told me the only reason he didn't stick around was his feet were too small and he couldn't make a second move on defense. Other than that, he was one of the best shooters in the whole country at 6'8", 6'9".
He was a Larry Bird shooter. He faded a little bit. Jump shot. So
I remember he put up 40 something against Eastern Illinois when we really wanted to beat them.
But we didn't win 20 games in high school.
Holy cow, that's incredible! Yeah. I mean, what is the most important thing you have drawn from your relationship with Gordie, would you say?
The most important thing when I reflect back, okay, I think Gordie treated everybody exactly the same. Okay, there were no favorites. Okay, I don't care if you're a 400 hitter or a 200 hitter. The book is aptly named, guy at the end of the bench. Okay, he was treated just as well, just as kindly, and given the same attention. Okay, I didn't get more batting practice than the guy at the end of the bench. Okay, I sure needed it, but I didn't get it. But he treated everybody the same. So I think that's the most important thing. Okay, and then the first thing I learned from him was maybe after our first basketball game. Okay, in the game. Okay, in the game, basketball's an emotional game, and he would be screaming and yelling at us sometimes at halftime.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and then he may say some loud remarks after the game. Especially if we got beat, our freshman year we got beat a lot. Okay, but what I noticed the moment we went out to eat in a restaurant, it was gone. It was gone. He didn't go sit by himself with Coach Ruddy and talk about, what did we do, blah, blah, blah. No, he was talking to the guy, Delgado, are you going to eat all that on your plate? Okay. Especially when we were at that smorgasbord up there at St. Ambrose, which I did. That was my first introduction to a smorgasbord. I was piling on. Okay. But, he was a completely different person. Okay. After the game was over, he didn't hold a grudge. He didn't, hold it against us because we played so poorly. Okay, so that's one of the main things I've learned from him about coaching. You let it go. You don't carry it over. Okay? So those are a couple things. Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. I've never looked at it quite from that perspective. You're absolutely right.
And then there's one other story. Let me tell you this one, Ray. I know we've talked about this before. We went up to play up in St. Paul, Minnesota up there. We were going to play St. Thomas, and then we're going over to Michigan, play Northern Michigan, our freshman year. Mm-hmm. And we were in a lobby like about 2 o'clock waiting. It was going to be an afternoon game, waiting to go to the game. And on TV there, was Illinois, I think was playing Indiana, and both teams had a couple great players, okay? And Coach Gillespie, I think that's part of his, okay, how smart he is, okay? Okay. Coach Roy said something about him, boy, those guys are really good, okay? And Coach Gillespie, within earshot, at least I heard it, I don't know if anybody else heard it, he said, I wouldn't trade any of my guys for any of those guys. You know, he makes you feel good. Okay. Now I know he traded the whole team for but the psychologist at the time, as he was being a psychologist, hey, he said it, I wouldn't trade any of our guys for any of those guys. Okay. Well, there's Coach Gillespie again. That's part of his teaching, the psychology of coaching. You got to make your guys feel good. Okay. Well, I felt good that when he said that. Mm-hmm.
What I did in the book, I took a little bit of license, but you were standing on third against Florida A&M, and we needed a run, and they had that big pitcher who took a 3-minute windup, and he signals for you to steal home. And I remember you telling me that, wow, I've never stolen home, or hardly ever. The coach is trusting me. And I told that story in the book about how you remembered that Coach Gillespie said, I wouldn't trade any of my players for those guys. And you said to yourself, if he's trusting me, then I can do it. And tell everybody what happened. So you took off. So this pitcher is winding up against Florida A&M in the national tournament. He kicks real high and he sees you running and he quick pitches. And then what happened?
Well, the catcher, probably figuring I was into my slide, dove at me. Okay, I hadn't even started my slide yet. And he must have scared the daylights out of me because you don't think about these things. I just jumped. I jumped over him. Okay, so he's sliding low. I'm jumping about as high as I could jump. I landed on the other side home plate. He landed on this side. He tried to get back. I beat him back. I beat him back to the plate before he could tag me. Okay, so I should have been 0 for 2, Ray, for stealing home. Now let me tell you where the other one. Okay, I'll go back to my high school. Sophomore year, we had an outstanding team. We ended up playing for a state championship game.
Wow.
Okay? State championship game. We lost to Maine Township. Okay, but again, I'm on third base, and the coach China says, "Now you're going in. The bases are loaded. We're already losing 2-0. We got one of our best hitters up." I didn't have a chance. Okay, I was into my slide. The catcher was waiting for me. Okay, so I should have been 0 for 2, but because this catcher dove at me at Florida A&M, I was able to jump over him. So I'm 1 for 1, or 1 for 2 anyway.
Against Florida A&M, one of your biggest advantages in stealing home was I wasn't catching. Ron Fernansky was catching, and Ron was about as wide as he was tall, and he blocked the catcher's view. So the Florida A&M players are all screaming, he's coming home, he's coming home. Poor catcher. All they had to do was stand up and tag you. But you're right, he dove out. But then the funny addendum to it is that the rain is coming, and that put us ahead in the 5th inning, and the rain is coming. So Gordie knew that we had to get out of this inning. So he yells into Fernansky to strike out.
Well, I don't know
2 strikes.
I don't know if you remember, Ray, in the top of the 9th, Ed Spiegel, our great hitter, okay, the one great hitter we had on the team, okay, Ed Spiegel at the top of the 9th hit a 3-run home run. They gave us an 8-4 lead, but then the skies opened up. And then his home run was washed off, so the score went back to the 8th inning, the 5-4 score.
Right. All right, now I've got to hear your version of the 93 season. And we don't have 5 hours now.
Okay. It was an incredible season. Okay, we start off on our southern trip.
Let me set it up for everybody, because some people might not know that you started coaching with Gordie in 1980. He had won 3 straight national titles with Lewis. He transfers to St. Francis. I've got a whole chapter as why he transferred. I couldn't write this book without, people are going to say to me, well, wait a minute, if he wins 3 national championships at Lewis, how did he end up at St. Francis? So I tell that story. It's not a very pretty story, but I felt I had to make justice of it. But in any case, then he hires you as an assistant, and he does well. You go to the World Series several times, didn't you? But in
they were there in 83, 85, 88, 89.
Yeah. But he didn't quite get to the end, to the championship. But in any case, 93 comes, and start us off with the interview you had with Paul Babcock.
With Paul Babcock, okay, Paul Babcock, it's a great story. I've told it 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Paul Babcock played on our junior varsity for 2 years. And he was, he could run, okay? He was a good defense player. He could run, okay? He couldn't hit, okay? He was a light hitter, okay? And so the Fred Bozier, who's our junior varsity coach, never said, hey, Paul, Paul should be on the varsity, okay? Well, now he's going to be a junior. Coach Gillespie calls me in and says, what are we going to do with Paul? He's never going to play for us. Okay? He's never going to play. Okay. I said, well, he's a great kid, coach, but, I'll sit him in front of me and I'll tell him, Paul, you're never going to play for us. Okay. I'll be the heavy. Okay. But if you want to stay on the team, hey, we'd love to have you. You got a great attitude. Okay. But it's a lot of time you got to put in, a lot of time spent. Okay, you might want to do other things. He said, no, coach, I'm not quitting. I'm sticking. So he stays on the team as a junior. He's just our runner. Okay, now it's our senior year. Okay, his senior year. We go down south. Our first game down south, he slides in the home plate and breaks his wrist or fractures his wrist or something. First game down south. And he started the game because Ivan Lawler, who was our best pitcher, started the game. Well, then Coach Gillespie said, okay, we'll put Paul in left field. We'll bat him ninth. We had a pretty good hitting lineup. He can't hurt us. Okay, he won't hurt us defensively. But first game, he breaks his wrist. Okay, he's out for the rest of the spring trip. We come back. Okay, now finally he's back to being our runner with a cast on. Soft cast. Now let's fast forward to the playoffs. The district playoffs, okay, the Illinois playoffs. Ivan Lauer is going to start the first game. And I might say this, he's our best pitcher, but we had a pitcher who was undefeated. Maybe we'll get into that, okay? But Ivan Lauer is going to start, so Coach Gillespie says, let's put Paul Babcock in left field. Okay, we put him in left field. We win the first game. Second game, Ivan's back in left field. Paul's back being my runner. We go to the area playoff. Same scenario. Ivan's going to start. Babcock's in left field. Second game, Ivan's back in left field. Paul's back to being our runner. Now we go to the World Series. Same thing. Ivan's going to start. Paul Babcock's in left field. Single, double, triple. Paul Babcock. First game of the World Series. Well, Coach Gillespie didn't win over 2,000 baseball games. I being a dummy. Okay, he said, okay. He says, Ivan, you had a tough game. We'll make you a DH today. Okay. Paul stays in left field. Okay. Now the second game, okay, we're losing. We have to rally. Paul leads off an inning. We're losing, I think, 4-0. Paul leads off the inning with a double. Okay. Double. We go on to score 6 runs. We end up winning the game 6-4. Paul led the parade. Okay. All right. So now Coach Gillespie doesn't like to leave a good hitter. He doesn't believe they can just be a designated hitter. So he puts Ivan in right field, takes our right fielder and says, Sam, you're going to be the DH today. Leaves Paul Babcock in left field. So we win the third game, fourth game, and Paul's just Paul Babcock. He didn't hurt us, didn't hit much. Fifth game, okay. Fifth game, we're winning 3-1. Their team's got runners at first and third with 1 out. Okay, and we're winning 3-1. They got a rally going. 1 out, first and third. About the fourth or fifth inning, I don't remember when. The guy hits a shot, the deep left center field. Ball can run. Okay, he takes off. Headlong dive, makes the catch. Jumps up, relays it to our second baseman. The runner on first made a critical mistake, base running mistake. You never round the base. You stand on second and wait and see what's going to happen. He rounded the base. And he had to go back, tag second, go back to first. Well, the relay beat him back to first base. The run from third scored. We got an inning winning 3-2 and won the national championship game 4-2. So that's the Paul Babcock story. It's a great, great story about a kid that persevered, didn't give up, hung in there, persevered. The kid at the end of the bench, that was Paul Babcock.
He's the quintessential example, isn't he?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. And your pitching staff was out of sight that season, wasn't it?
I can tell you this other story. We had another guy named Paul Chovanek.
Jovinek.
He's finished with high school. Coach Gussie says, Tony, let's go over to North Side. I want to see this kid pitch. Some kid wants to come to St. Francis. I want to go see him pitch. So we're going to see a kid by the name of Stan Kwasny pitch. Okay, so we go to North Side, and Coach Gussie, he doesn't need to watch somebody much. Okay, so we watch about 3. He says, okay, Dad, I've seen enough. We can go. We're walking out, and he sees this kid pitching in the dugout because we're walking right by not the dugout, the bullpen. So he stands behind the kid. He's watching this kid pitch. Paul Chovanek, okay? He says, son, how you doing? They introduced himself. He said, where are you going to college? I said, well, I don't know, nowhere. In particular, I haven't thought much. He said, well, think about St. Francis. Turns out Stan Kwasny and Paul Chovanek are best friends. So Kwasny's coming anyway.
Oh.
Okay. He's coming. So Chovanek comes along with them. Paul Chovanek pitched in our junior varsity for 2 years. The junior varsity coach, again, for those never said, hey, this guy can really pitch. What he had was a rubber arm. He could pitch every day, but he never said, hey, this guy should be on the varsity. Okay. Well, again, we don't play juniors on our junior varsity. So junior, he has to come up to varsity. So Coach Gillespie makes him a short reliever. Coach Gillespie doesn't believe in relievers. Okay. Here's the ball. I expect you to go 9 innings. Okay. But he did get the pitch a few times as a short reliever, and he lost the lead a few times. Okay. But now his senior year. Okay. We go on our Sunday trip. Now at that time, we would play about doubleheaders every day for 2 weeks. Okay. So we had, I think 1 year we had like 24 games booked. Okay?
Didn't he learn some kind of a different pitch?
Well, this is it. In the fall, on fall baseball. Let's go back there. Let's back to the fall. Okay. Coach Gillespie's coaching football.
Yeah.
So I ran the fall baseball program, and then our old pitching coach, Joe Heinzen, great guy, great baseball man, studied the game. He says, Paul, he was our pitching coach. He says, Paul, you can throw pretty hard, but you don't have a good breaking ball. He said, have you ever tried to cut fastball? No, I don't know. So he shows him how to offset it in his hand, and 5 guys can try it, 4 guys make it nothing. But the 5th guy, all of a sudden, the ball will just go. Okay, you see those guys in the majors today.
Yeah, they talk about it. Can you describe quickly how do you throw it? Is it like a fork ball?
Offset.
Separate your fingers?
You offset your 2 fingers. Okay, your next finger, middle finger, you offset it to the right side, thumb right-handed to the right side of the ball. So you can see most of the ball. So now you're throwing it just like a fastball. Your arm motion, your wrist motion is like a fastball, but because you're holding it there, it's like cutting through the ball. And that creates the spin. And that creates the spin. You're cutting, you're just throwing a fastball.
Yeah.
Okay, you're not turning, you're not throwing a slider, turning. But because you offset it so much, it helps to have bigger fingers.
Okay. All right.
Okay? And you're just cutting through it, but that creates the spin. So it's thrown hard, but then it's got a late hard break. So Paul Chovanek, so now we go down south, but he's still only about 7th on the staff, okay? Okay. And so, but we play so many games, so it's time for him to get a start. Okay? He asked Coach Gillespie, can I get a start? Okay, well, we play so many games down south, everybody gets a chance to start. So first game he starts, ends a 3-3 tie. But he pitched pretty well. No decision. It was a called after dark because of darkness after 9 innings, 3-3 tie. That's the beginning of the story. Here's Paul Harvey, the rest of the story.
Page 4.
He went on to be 13-0.
Wow.
He won the national championship game 4-2 and was selected as the NAIA National Player of the Year.
Wow.
That's the Paul Chovanek story. So I've told 1,000 times the Paul Babcock story and the Paul Chovanek story. And yet Ivan Lauer was our best pitcher. Paul Chovanek got out and boom.
I remember calling, I called, when you told me that story, I called all 3 of them. I called Gordie, Ivan, and Paul Chovanek. Now they won, Gordie was coach of the year, Ivan was player of the MVP of the tournament, and Paul was the player of the year. So they all three won the top awards going. Every single one of them. And I didn't tell them why I called back. I talked to them a little bit. I called each one with a specific, I said, now, did you win an award? I knew what award they won, but I tried almost a trick on them. I called Gordie. I said, did you win an award? Yeah, well, Ray, I won Coach of the Year. But I want to tell you, the person who should have won the award, who should have been the MVP of the World Series, Gordie said, Ivan said it, Paul Sholnick said it. They all said it should have been Paul Babcock who won the MVP of the World Series. But that gets to what Gordie, and this is what I'm searching for years and years and years. How can I explain to coaches? How can I explain to teachers? One of his commandments is team pride. Look at that. I mean, Sholnick went 13-0, and yet the first thing out of his mouth when I call him is Paul Babcock. Ivan was player of the year, yet the first thing out of his mouth was Paul Babcock. That's team pride.
Yeah.
Now, how do you teach team pride? First of all, how do you think, I'm going to put you on the spot now. How do you think Gordie taught it? Can you give us some examples? And how did you teach it then when you became head coach?
Well, I think I said earlier, the thing is to teach team pride, you have to be a team, not individuals, not a group of individuals. Okay, and that's, again, I'm reiterating what I said earlier. You treat everybody the same. Okay, you treat everybody the same. And you don't hold grudges. Okay, you're not mad at the team. You're never mad at the team. When it's over, it's over. Okay, and then Gordie wasn't mad at anybody when he was correcting us as players. He was teaching us. Okay, he was trying to teach us. Okay, hey, you didn't do this. You should have done this. You should have done that. Okay, but so he was teaching us. He wasn't calling Ray. And this doesn't have to be in you can delete this. I just read the book, finished the book. A friend gave it to me, Bob Knight's book. What's the book? What's it called? Bob Knight. It's about Bob Knight. Jared, do you remember? Oh, Jared's not here. Oh, A Season on the Brink. A Season on the Brink.
Oh,
have you read it? If you haven't read it, you got to read it, Ray.
All right, I'll write that down.
A Season on the Brink. It's about Bob Knight. Now, everybody would agree, okay, and I would agree. In terms of basketball, Bob Knight was a great basketball coach. Okay, he studied the game, he knew the game, he could teach the game. But after reading this book, I wouldn't want to play for him. Because I had the benefit of Coach Gillespie. And I say I had Coach Gillespie, and here's people that had played for Bob Knight. Two great coaches. They both won championships. Bob Knight didn't as many as Coach Gillespie, but they both top of the class coaches. But who do you want to play for? Whew. Coach Gillespie. Okay, Coach Gillespie. When you read that book, read it, Ray.
Yeah.
The Season on the Brink. Because, but the things he did to the players, the things he called them, the things he did, debased them, embarrassed them, never. Coach Gillespie never, not once, did he ever do that I'm aware of. Okay, so that's the difference. So that's what makes you feel good playing for Coach Gillespie. Well, you feel good, the team feels good. Well, that's team pride. Hey, we're going to do the best. And all he said, hey, but you're going to do the best you can. That's all you can do. Okay, don't give up. Do the best you can. That was Coach Gillespie's message. Paul Babcock, don't give up. I ain't giving up. I'm going to do the best I can. Well, he got his chance and he made the most of it. Okay, so I think that's how you teach team pride. You don't berate players. You don't embarrass players. You treat them all the same. Whether he's the star of the team, the guy hitting 400, the guy hitting 200. Okay, that's the way you make the players feel good about themselves. I mean, if they all feel good about themselves, well, the team's going to feel good about themselves.
When you say that, it's engendering so many ideas in my head. But I think I've told you that I became pretty good friends with Coach John Chaney, basketball coach at Temple in the Hall of Fame. And he was very much the same way. At practice, he'd be yelling in their face, but I'd be sitting in his office and one of the players would walk in. It was like I wasn't there. He and that player were together, and they would talk and just have a wonderful time. They all loved him, and it was the same way with Gordie. You and I used to beat people down to get into his car when we go on a trip, whether it was baseball or basketball. For 4 years, we used to ride together.
We were taking our life in our hands there.
Yeah. But we shouldn't tell anybody about what a poor driver Gordie was. Remember the time we're going to Loris, and we heard a thump in the car. And there are hills out there, in the border around the Mississippi. We heard this thump, 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 and Matichek is with us. And Matichek says, "Oh, I take care of cars. If you go real fast, Gordie, the thump will go away." And then the van pulled up next to us, and they're screaming at us, "Pull over! Your tire's about to fall off."
Well, we didn't know. We didn't know at the time because Jimmy Matichek, remember, he crawled under the car, and he came back out and says, "It's a drive shaft. If we go a little bit faster, now we're in those hills, those snaky hills."
Oh yeah.
And he's going to go faster. And as soon as we pulled off on the road, the back wheel fell off.
Oh,
The trips, I'm sure all college athletes who traveled like we traveled could write a book on the trips, things that happened on the trips.
Oh, yes. One other thing about a trip, though, that you made me remember another great story I'd like you to tell. And that is when Coach has one win away from setting the all-time record in that 93 season.
Okay, down at McKendree College.
You were going to go down to McKendree, and a couple of the kids came in and said what to Coach? They had class. And so they needed a note from the class, from Gordie, to miss class. And this was going to be a doubleheader when if you win one, he's going to tie the great USC coach. But if you win a doubleheader, he's going to set the all-time wins record in all of collegiate baseball. And what did he say to those players?
Go to class. Go to class. You go to class. We went down there. I think we had 3 pitchers for the doubleheader.
Wow. Gee.
Fortunately, we had our hitting belts. The hitting bats were hot that day, and so we didn't need the pitching. But that's Coach Gillespie. He priorities in the right place. Okay, that's another teaching lesson. Okay, hey, priorities in the right place. School first. Hey, baseball second. Okay.
Absolutely. I can remember like it happened 5 minutes ago, Tony. I can just see him walking up to me. I think it was the start of practice. Was it the start or it had to be the start of practice. So we're all set. It's about, if we started at 6 o'clock, I think we practiced in the evenings then because he had football, I think. And he walks up to me and he says, "Ray, you should be getting A's." And here I'm a dumb 18-year-old. I don't know what he's talking about. But he seemed to see beyond where I could see. He could see me in 10 years. He said, "You should be getting A's, and you should be." And then he said to me, "You should be going to graduate school." So what is he talking about? Graduate school? Me? And he made me. He was the one who made. It wasn't my math teachers. It was Gordie Gillespie who kept hounding me every day to go to graduate school. And he probably had a vision for you. He probably talked to you about coaching. You probably decided to become a coach, being right with him for so many years.
Well, I didn't really. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. Okay, nobody in my family had ever gone to college. Okay, truth be known, I went to college for 2 reasons: to play basketball and baseball. And the Christian brothers and the lay faculty had mercy in their hearts. Somehow I got a degree along the way. Okay, but I really didn't know what I wanted to do. But the only subject that interested me was history. I love history. Okay, and so Tippy McFadden and history, I love those history classes. So I knew I wanted to coach, but that was because of Coach Gillespie. Being with him for those years, watching him coach, convinced me, hey, that's what I want to do. I want to coach. Okay, that was my influence. Okay, and so I became a teacher and then a teacher coach. Okay, but it was due because Coach Gillespie, his influence on me. If I had some other coach was screaming, yelling, berating me at times, knocking me down. Maybe I wouldn't want to be a coach. I said, no, this isn't for me. But I had Coach Gillespie. Okay, and the thousands of us that had him are so fortunate that we can say, hey, we played for Coach Gillespie. Okay, so that's how I became a teacher and a coach.
You know what's interesting, Tony, is I look back on. I remember once Rudy of the movie Rudy said to me, there is no good college coach. All the good coaches are in high school. I said, Rudy, boy, I think you're right. Now, who was the best coach you ever had? He says, Gordie Gillespie, my high school football coach at Joliet Catholic. I said, right. I said, Rudy, you're absolutely right. There are no good college coaches. Of course, your high school coach was coaching you football the same days me and Tony Delgado were being coached by him, coaching basketball and baseball in college. And he goes, oh, that's right, except for Gordie Gillespie. So we all had run into bad coaches. And I had, I'm going to talk about my coaches, but I had a really good summer coach in Frank Mariani.
Yeah, Frank.
Frank coached at Notre Dame High School, but he started a summer team. And because I played on the same team in a different league with Kenny Malarski, they must have lost their catcher. Maybe their catcher got hurt or something. And he recruited me to play with them, even though I was a city kid and they played out in the northern suburbs. So I got to know Frank. But other than that, I really didn't have. And yet I asked Gordie, I said, why did you coach? He went through his coaches from high school. Brownstein, Coach Brownstein, just loved him. And then in college, he had phenomenal coaches in Illinois. Then he went to Great Lakes and he had great coaches there. And that's why I went, whoa, when you had the great connection was it the guy who gave you the basketball and he played with Gordie at Great Lakes in the Navy?
Yeah, Frank Kaufman.
And he said he had great coaches there. And then he went to DePaul and he played for the great Ray Meyer. It was absolutely amazing, the set of coaches that he had. And he said to me that he learned something from every single one of those coaches. But by the way, let me ask you another question. I'm going to put you on the spot once again. Sully said to me recently, he said, Ray, Gordie was really smart.
He's really what?
Smart.
Smart.
And I started thinking, I said, I've never thought of it from that perspective. But he was one of the smartest people I've ever met. Have you ever thought of it that way?
I never really looked at it that way, to be honest with you. I just thought he was a great coach. Okay, and I just loved playing for him. Okay, but in terms of being smart, obviously he was. Okay,
he remembered everything.
To do all the things he was doing. Okay, coaching basketball, coaching football, raising a family of 7 kids. Okay, athletic director, teaching classes. Okay. He had to be smart.
He had to be really smart to keep all of that in here. All those football plays. I mean, Dan Sharp talked to me about how they would sit down at 7 a.m. when he was an assistant with Gordie. He said, all right, come on over for coffee and donuts. So he'd come over and Joan would give him coffee and donuts. And they'd say, all right, now, Monday, we have our walkthrough a little later in a few hours. And they would sit there. In particular, he would say to Dan, what plays will work against this team's defense? And they would sit there and plan this. Now, you talk about Coach Krzyzewski, Coach K. I just read where he's going to retire after next year. He had to think about one sport. He had to worry about 12 players. Gordie, when we were playing for him, had 3 sports. He was coaching us baseball, basketball, and he was part-time at Joliet Catholic. He had 60 football players, 12 basketball players, and 25 baseball players. He had almost 100 players. He not only knew our names, he knew our girlfriends' names when we got married. He knew our children's names. It was incredible the way I think back on how smart he was, how he kept all of that in his head. And yet he would still have the humor. Can you think of the humorous things he would say and do to us? Did he ever pull anything on you as a player?
Pardon me?
Did he ever pull anything humorous on you as a player?
I didn't quite understand that question.
All right, so Gordie had one of the greatest humors.
Yeah. Well, yeah, him and Paul Ruddy. When they would say a joke or say something funny, Coach Gillespie, people, not a lot of people have heard him. He would get on a laughing jack.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, he couldn't stop laughing. He would get on a laughing jack. He couldn't stop laughing. Okay, now I'll tell you a story. You'll probably edit this one. I'll tell you a story. Joan and Joanne, my wife, Joan Gillespie, Gordie, me, we're in the car. We're going on our southern trip, and we're going to have to pick up. Joe Heinz at the airport. He didn't want to take the long drive down south to Dallas. He's going to fly in. So we got to go to the airport to pick him up. Okay. So all of a sudden, Gordie starts talking about that. And he says, you and Joanne, you're going to drive up in the airport. Now, doesn't say it's anything funny. You're going to drive up in the airport and you're going to roll down your window. And you're going to see Joe there. And you're going to say, Joe, what are you doing here? Now, that doesn't seem funny. But all of a sudden, he starts creating a story about them picking up Joe and this happening and that happening. It becomes a story. That was the humor in Coach Gillespie. He'd make a statement and he'd start creating a story, and then he'd start laughing, and he couldn't stop laughing. Okay, that was the humor, the funny and humorous side of Coach Gillespie. Okay, a lot of people haven't seen that. Okay, but that's another side of him. Okay.
I remember when Bob, his son, was coaching at Ripon, and Gordie moved up there, and he had that 50-year of coaching baseball celebration of Gordie, and all of us went up, and there were, I don't know how many, 150 guys, maybe even more than that, were up there, and they had an open mic, and the stories these guys told about Gordie were so darn funny. There were a few poignant ones, but most of them were absolutely hilarious. And I think one of the ways that he would work your tail off in practice, and you'd repeat a certain. I remember even with the great Spezio, he was throwing the bunt to Eddie and having him field it, maybe 40 times in a practice to get it right. And Eddie never blinked once. He just kept doing it. And so we would practice things, and he had me practice certain catcher drills, going to my left, blocking a wild pitch, going to my right, over and over and over again. But every single practice, he would think of something funny to say, doing something crazy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I keep saying through this whole conversation, I keep saying, come back to the same thing. How fortunate we were, Ray.
Oh.
How fortunate. Okay, us and so many others.
Absolutely.
End up with Coach Gillespie. Okay, there's thousands and thousands of other coaches we might have ended up with, but we ended up with Coach Gillespie. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of what I want to get across in this website, and that's why I'm doing these podcasts. So I hope that they can, people can put a face to Tony Delgado and see what a wonderful young man you've turned out to be. And you and I have talked so much about, without Coach Gillespie, who knows where we'd have been. And he as Tom Kennedy, Stretch always says, not a day goes by when I don't think of what would Gordie do in this situation, and the ideas that he implanted in our head. And those, well, for me, it was only those 8 short seasons. And then you were lucky enough to have an office right next to him for all those years. You picked up even more from him, and even our relationships. I remember once we were playing in the summer league, and you and I drove down with our girlfriends, you with Joanne and me with Judy, and we were in a tournament. And we drive up, and Coach says, well, we have time to go to practice. So I've got a practice field. It's about 2 miles away. So we're going to go to this practice field. And I think I drove, and Joanne and Judy said, well, can we go shopping? We said, oh, all right, go shopping, but get back here by 1 o'clock because we're leaving at 1:40. So make sure you're back here because the game's at 2 o'clock. Okay. So 1:30 comes, they're not here. Gordie says, all right, everybody get back in your cars and in the van. We said, Coach, our car's not here. And he looks at us and says, you can't leave because they won't know how to get to the stadium, wherever the tournament was. So you've got to wait here for them. Just make sure you're at the game by 2 o'clock. Okay. So you and I are standing there, 2 o'clock comes, 2:15 comes. We figure we're going to get killed. when we get to this game. So finally they come. Oh, we lost track of time. So we jump in the car and screech to the game. I think it must have been in the second or third inning. You and I run to the field. We figure we're dead meat. We come up, and as I remember it, I don't know if you remember it this way, I think he put his arms around us and said, guys, instead of yelling at us, he says, guys, someday you're going to get married, and you're going to have to deal with things like this.
Yeah, that's what he said. He said, well, we get once we get married. Yeah, that's all he said.
But I've remembered that the rest of my life. He didn't get mad. He just realized that we were in a predicament, and he was trying to tell us, you're going to have predicaments like this. But I think one of the things I'm garnering from this book and talking with more and more people, I'm starting to think what his real, because he said to me, you can coach and teach things in athletics that you can't in another classroom. And he says the athletic field is the greatest classroom there is. And I remember him saying that to me 20 or 30 years ago. And he's explained it a number of times, but I'm getting a clearer idea of what he means. I think what he means is the experience you have in athletics. Take you and me. We played all through high school, but then we played with the great one for 4 years. What we learned can't be learned anywhere else. I mean, you can pick it up, but you learn it in spades in playing athletics, especially, as you so eloquently said, for a good coach. You play for a lousy coach, you might not pick this up. But you learn how to strive and be like Coach Lombardi. Lombardi says, losing is worse than death. So just as you said earlier, that resonated with me, Tony, when he was so mad at us, but then he forgets it. So in the heat of the day, in the heat of that game, in the heat of whatever we're doing, you get mad, but it's okay. And how much of life is like that, right? Something terrible happens in our life, and you get like this. But if you can just say, oh, yeah, I did that a lot of times when I was in athletics, and I worked it out. I did this lousy thing, but I went to practice, and I practiced it over and over again, and I get better at it, and things like that. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, no, I agree 100%, Ray. As a coach, I wish I could have been as good as Coach Gillespie.
Well, I wish he could have been as good as you, right?
Not in the winning and losing. Okay,
yeah.
That's great, but that's not Coach Gillespie. Okay, yes, he has the records, he has all. That's not the Coach Gillespie you and I are talking about. But you and I are so glad, so fortunate to have played for. Okay. I try and say I wish I could be like he was. I don't think I could be when I was a coach. I tried to be. I didn't try to be Coach Gillespie, but I tried to say, okay, shut it off. Okay, shut it off like he could shut it off. Okay, you say what you have to say, do what you have to do, shut it off. Smile, tell a joke, pat the guys on the back, and eating. Okay, I don't think I did as good a job as he did. Okay, but that's the lesson. I think the big lesson he was trying to teach. What is athletics? Athletics, unless you're on some team that never loses, athletics is up and downs.
Always, yeah.
Okay? Up and downs. Well, okay. I tell Jared watching them Sox game, or I tell my wife this, they don't get it. I say, all the fans are cheering, okay, for the Sox, okay? The fans are always cheering when you're winning. You don't need to be patted on the back when you're winning.
Right.
You need to be patted on the back when you're losing.
Boy, that's eloquent. Well done.
Let's have those 35,000 people cheering for you when you're in a losing streak, okay? That's to me, fans have it backwards, okay? Well, I lost my train of thought there, but to me, the important thing is, okay, you'll be able to shut it off as Coach Gillespie did. Okay, we've said this a number of times already. Okay, you didn't carry it with us. Okay, and he's patting you on the back. Whether we lost the game, the next day, the game's over. Okay, the next day, he's not talking about what happened yesterday. That's why, again, I say, Ray, read that book, Season on the Brink.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to read it, Ray.
But you just gave me another great idea. Something else that I remember Gordie saying is that when your athlete does poorly and maybe causes you to lose the game, miss the ground ball, drop the pop-up, miss the free throw, whatever it was, drop the touchdown pass. The coach has to be smart. You're going to feel terrible. Losing is worse than death. Yes, but you have to be smart. Golly, I remember this now. This is how smart he is. And you have to have patience. So your patience is that you're going to see beyond this game. And you're going to walk up to that player because what you just said to him, that's the time the player needs to be patted on the back. Nobody ever wants to drop the football. Nobody ever wants to make an error. Nobody wants to miss a free throw. But when they do, the coach has to put his anger and his frustration, his losing is worse than death attitude aside and be smarter than his players and walk up to him and just what you said, pat them on the back.
Well, I can give you a situation that happened to me, okay, which I wasn't smart, okay, all right. I'm coaching at Lewis basketball, and we're playing against Loris, which I had coached for 3 years. So obviously, there's an extra incentive. You want to beat the team you were coaching previously.
Oh, sure.
Well, we were winning 92-91 with 4 seconds to go, and they had the ball out of bounds. And they had a great shooter. By the name of Kelly. Okay, could shoot the long jumper. They get it into him. Okay, and I got my best defensive player on him. Okay, he goes up to shoot, and my defensive guy fouls him.
Oh, I was just going to say, don't foul him.
He fouled him. Okay, there's no time left on the clock. Guy goes up, makes both free throws. We lose 93-92. In the locker room, I was so frustrated. I said, Mandy, how could you foul? Mandy was a great player, great kid, hustled. Okay, hustled all the time. He was a great baseball player too on Gordie's team. Hustled all the time. Okay, you know, and I'm saying, geez, how could you foul him, man? How could you know? Last year, and I've seen him a couple of times. I haven't seen him once. He coaches basketball. Went to junior college on the south side of Chicago somewhere.
Oh.
Okay, but I've seen him a few times. And finally, last year, it finally dawned on me. I said, Mandy's here. Come here. I saw my Lewis. Manny, I owe you an apology. Okay. There's nobody I would rather have had guarding that guy than you. Okay. Okay. And in the locker room, I got on you for fouling him. Hey, don't. Hey, there's nobody I would rather have guarding him than you. Okay. You foul him, so what? That's
that is a beautiful, beautiful story. You know what it says that it says to me that we all try to be like Gordie. I was lucky enough to win 2 awards. I didn't deserve them, but I did. One at Sunday, one at Monday, one at Lewis, one at Temple. And in each award, I was asked to give an 8 to 10 minute talk. You know what I talked about? All I've ever tried to do in my life was to emulate Gordie Gillespie. And I'm a mere shadow of him. So we're all a mere shadow of him. But the lesson you just taught us is beautiful. Even you went up to him, and even it was after when you would have, if you were like Gordie, you would have given it to him. But we all feel that way when we lose. And for you to give him that message, even years later, is a beautiful thing. And thank you for teaching us that. That is, I'll never forget that. It's wonderful. Tippy McNadden, our great mentor, he told me many times that he tried to take what Gordie taught him and become a better teacher because of it. Not so much a better coach. I mean, he did that too because he was a track coach.
Yeah, track coach.
He never ran track in his life, he said. In fact, when Gordie told him to become track coach, he said, okay. And he picked up a track shoe once and he says, what is this? His track stars had to tell him what it is. But in any case, we can all learn from Gordie. But what a great lesson you just taught us. Thank you so much. Well, listen, this has been sensational, Tony. I can't think of anyone I'd rather share an hour about Gordie with. maybe we can do this again because there's so much more we get to. There's so much. I've got a list of notes that goes a page long. That,
It's easy to talk about Coach Gillespie.
It's easy to talk about Coach Gillespie.
I'm sure you put this in your book, and I tell everybody this until somebody proves me different. Okay. You and I and Tom Kennedy and Sullivans and everybody else, we played for the greatest coach in the history of American sport.
No question about it.
Not only because of the athletic feats, okay, but because of who he is, the way he conducted himself. Okay, after games, after wins or losses, no matter what. Okay, friendships. Okay, and as all good coaches, you have a friend for life.
Yeah.
And you know, I coached at Loras College. I'm sure Jerry Potts, who was the head coach, called Gordie first. I'm sure Gordie, gave me a good go. Okay. Now from there, I went to IIT. I think you were the one that told me they were going to need a basketball coach, an assistant coach at IIT.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Ed Glancy called Gordie.
Yeah, I knew Glancy. Yeah.
And so I'm sure Ed Glancy called Gordie. Okay, and Gordie, I'm sure, gave me a good word there. Okay, so he helped me at Loras. Well, Tom Kennedy hired me in Aurora High School. Okay, but then Loras, I'm sure Coach Gillespie helped me. I'm sure he helped me at IIT. Obviously, then he hired me at Lewis, and then hired me at St. Francis. Okay, so we've been lucky, Ray. We've been.
Boy, that's for sure. And as much as we can, as much as I would love to pass on all these lessons of coaching and teaching, and just how to live your life better, how to take care of these, the least of our brethren, the kid at the end of the bench.
He told me, I'll throw it in again. You're going to edit things, but he told me. I'll tell you a couple of things he told me. Okay, one, I was coaching basketball, and he assisted me one year, man. That's like the pupil teaching the master. Okay, he was my assistant, okay, and I was hot and humid and hot and heavy and screaming and yelling and walking up and down the bench. And he said this to me, and he didn't, he didn't name me, but he just made the statement. He said, Tony, a lot of times, and this was like we're eating lunch the next day or something. He said, Tony, a lot of times coaches are screaming and yelling, they're trying to say to the fans, I'm not at fault. It's those guys out there, my players. Okay.
Oh.
So he didn't say Tony. He didn't say Tony, you shouldn't be screaming like that. He just said, Patrick says, Tony, times coaches are screaming and yelling. They're trying to tell the fans, it's not my fault, it's their fault out there. Okay. I got the message.
Yeah.
Okay. I got the message. He was subtly telling me, Tony, okay, don't pass it on to the players. You're the coach, you're the head man, don't pass it on to the players. Okay. And then another time when I first year I took over basketball at Lewis, I had a guard who came to me, and he saw I wasn't going to start him. Okay. You see him practice. I wasn't going to start him. He came in and he was complaining. He was complaining about, I think I'm better than these guys. Okay, blah, 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 blah. And I was afraid that he was going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Coach Gillespie would deal with the problem. Okay. My way of dealing with it, I cut him. Okay. I cut him because I was afraid he was going to be a problem.
Sure.
Instead of convincing him, hey, you're going to be a John Havlicek off the bench. Hey, you can shoot. He wasn't fast. He wasn't a great defensive player, but he could shoot. Hey, you're going to be our John Havlicek off the bench. Hey, stick in there. Don't hang in there. You never know. If somebody goes down, you're this guy in. I was afraid, so I cut him. Then when I mentioned next day to Coach Gillespie, when he said to me, he said, Tony, the easiest thing to do is to cut somebody. Okay, the easiest thing to do is to cut somebody. Meaning, that's not coaching. Coaching is keeping them there. And keeping the Babcocks in the program, keeping them there. Okay, and then if they want to choose to go out, well, that's their prerogative, but don't cut them. Okay.
Wow, another great lesson.
I regret that to this day that I cut them. But anyway, those are a couple.
Wow, that's wonderful.
I learned from Coach.
Well, listen, I can't thank you enough. This has been so much fun. We've had a gajillion conversations in our lives, and this is one of the most cherished. I thank you so much.
And I still remember you pointing your finger out at Lincoln Park. You were giving us a dissertation on something, and we're saying, "Hey, would you get ready to hit the ball?" You and me, and
Well, what I remember is you and I would stay after practice. We'd get a bucket of balls from Gordie, and you had this underhanded pitch. We practice, you and me practice hitting, and you had this underhanded pitch that I could not hit. I was so mad at you.
if we only knew then what we know now about hitting, something.
Yes.
And there's an easier way.
Yeah. I'd have watched Spezio a little bit more and copied him.
Yeah.
We had a great time.
Those were 4 great years.
We went all the glory.
They went too fast. Yeah.
It went too fast. Yeah. All right. Thank you, my buddy. Let's do this again. Okay.
Give my love to Judy and the family when we talk to them. Okay, buddy.
Okay. Same to Joanne.
All right. Hey, stay in touch. We'll stay in touch. Talk to you
I
soon.
love you. See you, kid.
Okay. Love you. All right. Bye-bye.